using a small percentage of our brain. And so in this movie, there is this magical pill that's really hard to get that is making human brain work at its fullest, 100%. Okay? And then the main hero in this movie gets hold of this pill completely by accident. It's really windy and noisy. And then he completely is able to change his life because then his thinking abilities, his analyzing abilities are increased by so much, you know. Some scientists believe that it is true that we're not using our brain 100%, that we're using only a small percentage of our brain. Others say that it's not true. So today we're gonna learn some interesting facts about the human brain that I have collected from different articles and also different places that books I've read over the time. Now, one interesting fact that I was told by a medic is that when they were examining brains of dead people, those who had had dementia or those who had had very little mental activity in their later years, their brains were almost like very sloppy-ish, kind of quite smooth and not as tight as they should be. And that means that the brain, even physically, had started deteriorating. And that is an interesting fact because that means that we have to physically keep our brain active and healthy. By keeping it active, learning things, not just when we're at school, the university, but throughout life. Learning, reading, doing crosswords, things that will stimulate stimulate our brain, the work of our brain. And also, an interesting fact is that, you know, that when Einstein is believed to be one of the smartest people that's ever lived, the author of the theory of relativity, his brain, when it was extracted from his head, weighed more than the brain of an average person. Now, another interesting fact about the brain is that people who are smarter, their brain is more wrinkled than the brain of people who are not very smart, which relates to the very first fact that I told you about, right? And an interesting fact about our brain is that our brain is actually the fattiest part of our body. Let me read more precisely about that. The thing is that 60% of the human brain is made of fat. Yes. And not only does that make it the fattiest organ in the human body, but these fatty acids are crucial for your brain's performance. So make sure you're fueling it appropriately with healthy brain boosting nutrients. Now we could actually talk about brain boosting nutrients in another video. Another interesting fact about the brain is that our brain is not fully developed until the age of 25 approximately. It's slightly different with other people, but that is the approximate age. And so when people are making decisions at a younger age, they're really not consent. Especially very important decisions. For instance, getting married at, 16. Or even more, actually, that is like such a little decision in comparison with having operations, surgeries done to change their gender, at a very, very young age, taking, hormones, doing mastectomy, which is removing the breast, or actually sterilizing children. I think at the age of like 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, even 17, or you may not want to have a child, or you may not really be consent enough to know what to do with your body, especially if you are in general a bit of a troubled person and you have issues mentally. So yeah, I am definitely in the group of people who are very much against those early transitions, because I feel like can bring a lot of sadness, regret, and damage. Just damage, both physical damage and therefore also mental damage. So our brains are not fully developed until 25. And this is why brain development begins from the back of the brain and works its way to the front. Therefore, your frontal lobes, which control planning and reasoning, are the less to strengthen and structure connections. Now, your brain's storage capacity is considered virtually unlimited. Our brains are like computers, but computers that have not been created until now. They're absolutely unbelievable. And if you train them right, then the extent of things that you can achieve is basically unlimited. Of course, there are scientists that are talking about our physical abilities that we are already born with. So some people have brains that are more capable of, say, being smart in general, like intellectually, than others. But then also what being smart means. Oh, this is a whole other topic, because, for instance, a lot of people think that if someone, let's say, is good at maths, they're smart. Not, because the ability to count is just an ability. Is that, and while IQ tests can measure to a certain extent the intellect of someone, but they can't really be a universal test form of how smart someone is, or how great someone is. Because if I believe some of the greatest brains in the human history, like, I don't know, Beethoven or Bach, or some of the writers, greatest writers in history, took those tests, I'm sure a lot of them would fail. So, despite the fact that some of us are born with certain abilities more than others, still our storage of the brain is pretty much unlimited. And let's see what they're writing. So the research suggests the human brain consists of about 86 billion neurons. Each neuron forms connections to other neurons, which could add up to 1 quadrillion, which is 1,000 trillion connections. Over time, these neurons can combine, increasing storage capacity. However, in Alzheimer's disease, for example, many neurons can become damaged and stop working, particularly affecting memory. And unfortunately, we have not been able to really cure Alzheimer's or other brain issues and illnesses. We're able to slow it down, but can't completely cure it, which is really sad and just shows how much more place we have for development. And then if we're able to cure that, then we can also be able to have a tablet like in the movie Limitless, which would help our brain use all of its neurons and strengthen them. Now, another interesting fact about the brain is that they have calculated the speed of brain information. Exactly, I don't know how they've done that, but it says that brain information travels up to an impressive 268 miles per hour. So basically, when a neuron is stimulated, interesting fact that was not listed here but was listed in another article and also in some programs is that this cell-to-cell kind of information passage also depends on how much sleep we've had and also what we eat and how much we eat. So basically, when we've eaten a lot and we're full at that very moment, our brain is working slightly slow, and it's not the best time to make active decisions if we're too full. Also, if we're very, very hungry, that also slows down the process. So the best time to make great decisions, important decisions, is when we've had like a meal maybe an hour ago or so. Now another interesting fact about our brain is that our brain is communicating with the rest of our body through our spinal cord. You know that sometimes we feel that we have organs that don't really have pain receptors, but we feel pain in there. And the way that we feel this pain is because they're sending signals to our brain, telling our brain that they're not okay. And so that is happening through mostly our spinal cord. And our spinal cord is developing until we're 4 years old. So at 4 years old, our spinal cord is fully developed. And when our spinal cord, that's why it's so important to be careful. And one of the reasons my mom wouldn't let me do certain activities when I was a child, because if you get your spinal cord damaged, then that communication is disrupted. Now, there are some diseases that happen, for instance, ALS or amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, that they cause the neurons in the brain and spinal cord to die. Another disease that affects both the brain and the spinal cord is multiple sclerosis. And again, the immune system attacks the protective layer that covers nerve fibers, causing communication problems between the brain and the body. So this is one of the reasons you should take care of your spine, because brain and the body are connected and passing information to each other through the spinal cord. And unfortunately, if spinal cord is damaged, it is impossible for it to recover. The human brain weighs 3 pounds. That's about as much as a half gallon of milk. However, size does not always imply intelligence. Men tend to have larger brains than women, but that doesn't mean that men are more intelligent than women. So, like I said at the very beginning of this video, the intelligence physically can be calculated by the amount of different sort of wrinkles on the brain. If the brain is kind of flat, then the owner of that brain is not very intelligent, maybe was once, but hasn't had activity much in the brain. And if it's very wrinkled, then that means the person is quite smart, and someone can have physically a larger brain but with fewer wrinkles than another person who has a smaller brain but with many more wrinkles on it. Another interesting fact is that musicians have different brains to everyone else. So let's see. Musicians have more connected brains than non-musicians. And I found many articles saying this. The brains of musicians have stronger structural and functional connections compared to those of non-musicians, regardless of innate pitch ability, according to new research from Neurons. Years of musical training shape the brain in dramatic ways. A minority of musicians with Mozart and Michael Jackson in their ranks, I don't know Mozart and Michael Jackson. It's uncomparable, with all due respect to Michael Jackson, as a singer and a performer. Also possesses absolute pitch, the ability to identify a tone without a reference. Well, I think if you're a musician, you have to have pretty much an absolute pitch, which is the ability again to identify the tone without looking at it and just knowing what it is. In the biggest sample to date, labeled ETL compared the brains of professional musicians, some with the absolute pitch and some without, to non-musicians. To the team's surprise, there were no strong differences between the brains of musicians with the absolute and without absolute pitch ability. Instead, absolute pitch may shape the brain in more subtle ways. Compared to non-musicians, both types of musicians had stronger functional connectivity, the synchronized activity of brain regions in the auditory regions of brain, both brain hemispheres. Now, what I believe is that depending on what you do, your brain will be developed in a slightly different way, because here they say musicians and non-musicians, but they're not saying who are non-musicians. I believe that people who are doing, for instance, making, I don't know, planes, submersibles, ships, and things like that, they also have a different brain to non such professionals, and it's just not developed enough. This science about the brain, we haven't really examined enough the human brain and the brains of people of different talents. So that's what I sincerely believe, and I think obviously it's a very hard material to actually study, but I think if we study, we will come to very interesting conclusions. Another interesting fact, just something that I remember, it's not in any of these articles, but I've seen it in Nat Geo Wild documentary, and it just surprised me a lot. So it was a program about crocodiles, alligators or crocodiles, and the alligator, and I know these are slightly different, but the alligator, they bury eggs. Their ketos are eggs, are developing in eggs, and then those eggs break, and the little alligators are coming out to the surface, and then the mama alligator, who's huge, has to actually carry those ketos to the water so that they survive. And as she was carrying some of the ketos, she was totally crushing the others without even knowing it. She was just like crushing them. And being one of the largest mammals in the world, they have one of the smallest brains. They have tiny, tiny brains, okay? So this also made me wonder, because they are the closest ancestors to dinosaurs. Could this be one of the reasons that dinosaurs actually didn't make it? I know it was because of the weather. I know, of course. Because the unbearable conditions. And still, I started to wonder how large all of those famous dinosaurs that we know, how large their brains were. And if their brains were large, were they also functioning enough? Were they, say, wrinkled enough? Because those wrinkles, why people with wrinkled brains are considered to be smarter, is because they create ways for those neurons that I was talking about earlier to travel more into space. It gives them space. And on the contrary, who has the largest brain in the world? It's the sperm whale. And sperm whales are very smart again. Maybe we just haven't really examined their brain enough, because also there was this experiment of wolves and dogs, for instance, where they had to get a treat, to get food, for instance, from a place, United Efforts. So that experiment showed, and there is a video of that, if I find it I will link that down below, that when it came to United Efforts, wolves were smarter. They were just more connected and they just knew exactly what to do to get the treat. Whereas dogs, they're more trained to their brain is more trained to think of things like individually and not in a pack, so to speak. So they would be much slower, doing those tasks than the wolves were. The wolves would just do this task, immediately solve it, guess how to do it, So yeah, I guess the topic of brain is really limitless as the brain itself, and the more we learn about brain, the more we're fascinated by it. And I think it's also very interesting how we forget. Our brain has a capability of forgetting a lot of negative things. And many years ago when I was at school, I was reading an article about these Japanese people, scientists who had created a pill that would actually take away your negative memories, a lot of your negative memories. And these pills were being given to people with huge traumas. And our brain is actually itself, without a pill, is often able to forget a lot of the pain, negative memories that happen to us. For instance, when a woman is giving birth, she's experiencing an immense amount of pain, especially if it's a natural birth, right? And so if at that very moment she's experiencing that pain, or like the next day, she doesn't want to give birth again. She's like, no, never again. But then sometime later, she is ready to have another child and another child, because she remembers that it was painful, but she doesn't remember the actual pain, And that is very interesting. And talking about the pill that would erase negative memories. So these days it's a common practice. For instance, there are type of pills that are called the beta blocker and these beta blocker pills, I know that they are usually prescribed for blood pressure, because my mom has high blood pressure that she takes pills for. And this article says that these drugs, they control blood pressure, performance anxiety, even migraines, but they also help to stabilize fearful memories, which are the hardest to forget. And at the moment, the scientists are actually working on creating a pill that would not just in general help your brain forget negative or fearful memories, but target specific memories. I found an article that said that the forgetting pill erases painful memories forever. New research shows that memories are formed and then actually rebuilt, and soon the scientists may be able to target and erase specific memories altogether. So this experience would be conducted in a way that a doctor would ask specific questions about a very traumatic event in a person's life, and then they would take this pill, or systematically take this pill for a period of time, or it would be a one-time pill, and then they would ask questions about this event again and see what the patient actually remembers. Really sounds like from some kind of a science fiction sci-fi movie, right? Wow, can you imagine if that actually existed? And then if people were actually made to take certain pills, they didn't want it, but then they were made to. That's very scary, but also quite beneficial for some people, because fantasy dream.